This is Catch a Break, the insider's guide to breaking into and navigating Hollywood, conceived by Catchlight Films. Whether you are looking to work in film or television or new media, it's all production and it's all entertainment. Maybe you are already in the business, but looking to make a change, shift your focus, explore a new area. This is for you too. In each episode, Catch a Break brings you a panel of top experts currently working in the business for conversations you won't hear anywhere else, and will provide you with bonus materials you can get your hands on and sink your teeth into. We'll give you samples of paperwork and forms you need to be familiar with, video tutorials, exclusive resources that will all help with your success. The presenting sponsor of this episode is the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. If you are producing content, call Extreme Reach. This episode is also sponsored by VetYourCrew.com, a global database of entertainment professionals geared toward collaboration and inclusion. Think of it as a global address book for crew, which also has an interactive calendar to show when you're available, and a robust search engine to help you find and hire exactly who you're looking for. Go to VetYourCrew.com to sign up. You can find us at catchabreakpodcast.com and all the podcast providers. I am your host, Julie Harris Walker. You may know me from the podcast The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood, or even the Kiss My Age show. But today, the focus is on you and how we can help you to catch a break. Welcome to Catch a Break, the insider's guide to breaking into and navigating Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker, your host, and this episode is called Career Paths, Internships, and First Jobs. This is the episode where we take a deep dive into getting that very first job. Where do you even start? What's the deal with internships? How do I get my foot in the door? We are going to try and answer all of these questions and get you started on your path. We have an incredible panel today who bring a variety of different perspectives on this topic. First, we have Laurie Liu. Laurie was one of the first employees of Participant Media and created the entire human resources and operations infrastructure for a company that was first of its kind. With Participant's mission to create content that inspired and compelled social change, Laurie took on the role of building the culture. She also built an intern and fellowship program that employed upwards of 100 students a year. She forged relationships with schools across the country and became known for creating an internship program that included one-on-one mentoring and workshops focused on resume writing, online profile optimization, job search education, and interviewing skills. Laurie is now a successful human resources consultant and key business advisor to CEOs and executive teams for many high-profile clients. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Go for it.
What was your very first job and how did you get it?
In the entertainment business, this is a funny story, but I'll make it short, was at an entertainment law firm in New York, and I was living in Delaware. So I actually left an executive position at a bank at a Fortune 500 company and started taking the train from Delaware to New York to become an office manager / development girl at a very small entertainment law firm in New York.
Every day?
Every day. And then I would stay in the city maybe once or twice a week with some college friends. The kicker is that is how I got my job at Participant Media ultimately. That head of the legal department ended up getting a job at Participant when the company first started, and I was one of his first calls.
Being in the right place at the right time.
Means everything.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
We also have Andrea McCall. Andrea McCall has been the head of story at DreamWorks since before 1990, where she currently runs the internship program and story PAs. She's a wealth of knowledge on topics like what she looks for in a resume, how to conduct yourself and get the most out of an internship, and the skills that she and her staff teach everyone coming through her department before they can go out and cover desks or move to another position at the studio. Before DreamWorks, Andrea got her start in the industry at William Morris, working in lit. She never went to film school. Instead, she found her way through working in TV commercial productions. She started out at Amblin as a second assistant and was made the story editor right around the time that DreamWorks came into existence. And she's been working there since in a variety of roles. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much.
What was your very first job and how did you get it?
Well, the first job in the industry was working at William Morris. And I got it I signed up with a temp agency and I told them I don't want to work at any company that is outside of entertainment. So only send me to industry-related jobs. And I got some weird jobs at first. They were testing me out to see, what kind of worker I was in person. And little by little, the jobs they sent me to were closer and closer to where I wanted to be. So I was working at Edgar Sherrick production company, who at the time was doing lots of film and TV. And this guy kept walking past my desk, and I didn't know what he was doing. He was kind of literally checking me out. And after my first week there, he said, "Hey, I have a friend who's looking for an assistant at William Morris. I think you'd be a good fit there." And I said, "Okay." And I went, and I met the agent, and she hired me on the spot, and that was my entry into the business.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah. Do you think temp agencies are still a real viable way to get in?
I do. I don't know why more people don't do that, because to me it's just takes a little time, but once you prove yourself, I think it's it's a good shoe, and everybody in the industry uses temp agencies.
Because it does put you in the office.
Yes, right there where you want to be. Sometimes maybe in an area that's not your first go-to spot, but it's a way in, and then you get referred.
All right, smart. Thank you for joining us. And we have Eve Honthaner. She's the Deputy Director of the California Film Commission. And Eve has an extensive background in production management, having worked on films such as Titanic, Just Married, and Tropic Thunder, and for companies like DreamWorks and Legendary Pictures. She's the author of 2 entertainment-related books, one might say Bibles, called The Complete Film Production Handbook and Hollywood Drive, What It Takes to Break In, Hang In, and Make It in the Entertainment Industry. For the past 19 years, she's been teaching a summer course she created for USC's School of Cinematic Arts and is a member of the Producers Guild of America. Welcome, Eve.
Thank you.
What was your very first job in the business, and how did you get it?
It was a teacher who she asked me if I would be willing to quit school for a semester because she had a friend who worked at KCET and was looking for an assistant for a special project. And I thought, wow, who wouldn't want to work at a TV station? So she said, I'll set up the interview for you. So she did, and I got the job, and I never went back to school. That was it. I loved it.
You were in.
I was in. I drank the Kool-Aid, as they say. Yes.
Thank you for joining us. And we also have Michael Figari. Michael graduated with honors from the USC School of Cinematic Arts, where he was awarded the Jack Oakey Scholarship for Cinematic Achievement. Michael has worked as both a writer's assistant and executive assistant for several major TV series, including Burn Notice and White Collar. His web series Bros was sold into distribution with Coldcast TV. Michael currently is the manager of the producers program at the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television, where he supervises day-to-day operations of the graduate MFA program. Additionally, Michael applies his practical industry knowledge to oversee internships for the school and guide students through the process of finding internships that lead to future careers in the business. Welcome, Michael. So the big question is, how is it for you working at UCLA after going to USC?
I think that the name Judas rings a bell. No, it's great. It's great.
But what was your first job in the industry, and how did you get it?
My first position in the industry was as a personal assistant to a showrunner by the name of Matt Nix, who created Burn Notice. And I got that job because my college roommate was working as the script supervisor on the show, and this guy, Matt Nix, needed a personal assistant for 3 weeks, and I got hired and then stayed there working with him for overall 2 years throughout the show.
Thank you for joining us. And this is always the story. When it's a job for 2 weeks, take it, because that could turn into 10 years. You really just never know. And finally, we have Jessica Malanafi. Jessica was formerly a vice president at Blumhouse Productions, where she helped pioneer a new model of studio filmmaking, producing high-quality, micro-budget films for wide release. At Blumhouse, she oversaw films such as The Purge, Ouija, and the Insidious franchise. Following her time at Blumhouse, Jessica joined Illumination Entertainment as vice president of creative, working on such films as Despicable Me, Minions, and The Secret Life of Pets. Currently, Jessica is an independent producer and co-founder of Catchlight Films. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi.
What was your first job, and how did you get it?
My first job was as an office PA on the TV show Numbers, and I got it because my husband's freshman year classmate, Adam Karp, was working in TV, and he called me when I first moved back to LA after college and got both my husband and I hired in the office to fill in for another PA who was going to be starting in 3 weeks. So that was that 3-week-long job that I took, and that's about as long as I lasted in production before I started looking for a nice desk job.
Luckily, there are a million jobs in Hollywood. Thank you for joining us. Now, to get us started, earlier in the week I interviewed a recent college graduate, Parker Lamal-Brown, to find out what the current experience of a recent graduate might be and what kind of questions they might have. Let's listen to some excerpts of this, and then we will come back to see if we can't offer some advice. I'm sitting here with Parker Lamal-Brown, who is a recent college graduate and moved to Los Angeles to pursue a career in entertainment. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Where did you go?
I went to Bowdoin College in Maine. It is a small liberal arts school right on the coast of the Atlantic. It was sociology with a minor in Francophone studies, which is a fancy word for French.
But what do you want to do?
I want to write for TV, and I ultimately would love to be a showrunner.
So when you graduated, you wanted to move to LA and start working in the business. What did you do?
I started networking like 2 years earlier, just when I first wanted to go into entertainment, where I basically went on Facebook, and I knew 2 people who worked in Hollywood who had come do an improv show in my town. And I had an improv club, and we did this workshop together, and somewhere along the way we became Facebook friends. And so years later, when I was a junior in college, I realized that you could go and see people's friends on Facebook and you could send them friend requests. And so I kind of knew who these guys were working with, or like, you know, they knew somebody on one show. And I was like, well, that show has writers on this show and this one and this one. And like, you could kind of draw a map of who was working there. So I started sending out hundreds of friend requests to all these like writers and producers and actors in Hollywood. So I did that. And if people would, you know, for every like 60, you'd get like maybe 3 friend requests, and then I'd send out a message to them and be like, hey, I'm a student, I'm interested in TV. Do you have any advice, or like, can we have a phone call? And out of those, you know, like I probably got like 300, like hundreds of friend requests, and then I got to get on a couple dozen calls with people and just ask their advice.
Okay, let's break this down. You went on Facebook. You figured out who was writing on shows. You targeted those people. You friended those people, and you asked them to talk to you.
Yes,
and they
it sounds
did.
really creepy. Yeah.
That's amazing. This is a whole new world.
It really is, yeah. And I always say it's like professional stalking, but it works.
It did work. So this is not the try to get an internship through the studio program that has 25 interns and a whole long list of competitive whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I just never heard about those opportunities. And like going to a liberal arts school, there were certain paths that were very well paved for students, but most of it tended to be like, you know, law, finance, medicine, consulting, and nonprofits were kind of the major career paths. And there were some fellowships that were offered for entertainment, but usually like they were for students of color or something else that I wouldn't qualify for. And even when I did ask for certain internships, like my career advisor just didn't know where to find them.
Man, so you really created your own path. That was really smart.
Thank you.
So you moved here.
I did, yeah. I planned on doing it no matter what. I was like, I'm not going to be living in Ohio any more than I need to. Like, I booked my flight like several months in advance of like end of June, I'm leaving.
You were determined.
Yeah, and I was hoping like, you know, worst case scenario, I was like, okay, I will have like a month between when my college roommate was moving out, and I was like, just try to find a job then, like if that's not going to happen. But I got really lucky by having this job offer literally the day before.
So where is this internship?
So this is at eOne in Santa Monica.
And it's paid?
It is, yes, which everyone's like, what? I can't believe it.
So what are you doing in that internship?
So I work in TV development. It's currently me and one other intern, and we'll do coverage of scripts that come in. We do basic research for people. Say if, you know, there are people looking for writers or directors and just kind of want like a general idea of the field. We'll make spreadsheets, things like that. I've made cue cards for marketing tapes, like did that with the head of marketing. Sometimes it's just like covering people's desks. I'm learning how to roll calls and just kind of fill in for different assistants, which has been really cool. And seeing, you know, being in business and legal affairs versus being in like the more creative side.
Are there a lot more moving parts than you thought?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So you have this internship now, and you're starting to think about when this internship ends, what you're going to do. What is your plan?
That is a very good question. I don't know, I've been thinking about that a lot. And one of my biggest questions is just like, when do I ask about jobs? Who do I ask and what should I be looking for? And I ultimately want to work in a writer's room, but I've heard from multiple people that I should really be getting agency experience. So that's the first big question is like, do I go and join a mailroom, or should I try to get, a writer's PA job, or should I work in production? Should I continue working in development? If somebody offered me like, they needed a new assistant somewhere, like that's happened for other interns at my company, like should I take that opportunity? And so that's what I'm really wondering is like, what should I be seeing?
The list of all the options that you laid out, that's kind of the obstacle and the magic of it, because you could take any of those paths and get where you want to go. I think it depends on which opportunity presents itself and you grab onto it. Okay, so if you had 3 questions for our panel of experts, what would they be?
Who do I ask for a job, and when, and do I ask at all? I think it's how do you find opportunities, really? How can I try my best to be in the right place in the right time? How do I find a mentor? That's my biggest question, I think, right now. And like I have material, but a lot of times with my own writing, I'm like, I can't really find a way to go further than I already have without having outside feedback and kind of beyond just friends and family from back home, but now wanting to see like, what does this look like in the industry? Sure. So that would be like the most valuable thing, I think, right now. And then this is a more specific thing, but like, should I be going to an agency? And that's been something that has always been suggested to me from the very beginning, and it's something that I'm always been kind of wary of. It's like a culture in itself.
You mean to work at one or to submit your work to?
To work at one, yeah.
Yeah, some people would say, go work inside the agency, you see how it all works, and then you have all those connections.
Yeah, and I think that there was a bigger question, too, that I was really wrestling with a few weeks ago, was like, I was asked to write a bio about myself, which is in the third person, and I identify as non-binary, and I use they, them pronouns, and suddenly it was this, should I use that in this bio, or should I be using, like, female pronouns because that's more acceptable? And it became a bigger question of, like, how genuine should I be presenting myself, even if it's at professional risk? And especially for me coming from, this tiny liberal arts college, I'm like, I was in this bubble and I'm aware of that, but being new to the industry, I really don't know how progressive people are or what things people are aware of. So I'm like, am I bringing in this new vocabulary? And like, am I alienating myself? And this became like, where I am, like, if I only have my work to go off of, I don't want to put any obstacle in front of people reading my work. So that became this really like ongoing debate about gender and pronouns and just like general presentation.
I'm going to say to you what I've interviewed now, 125 people in this business. Your authenticity is your superpower. You have to be as authentic as possible, and you could not be at a better time in a better place right now to be exactly who you are, and that is going to be the thing that shoots you ahead in your career.
Wow, that is really great to hear. I am so excited to be here like right now, and just watching from kind of the sidelines while I was still in college was like everything about like the Me Too movement has just been blowing my mind. And like having you say that means so much to me. Like it's these little pieces of encouragement that I've gotten from people. Like I've talked to, I think, about 60 industry professionals by now, but like I remember like that one sentence that was kind of like, we need you out here.
Yeah.
Or like, do it. Just like be yourself and do this thing. And it's fairly simple, but those are the ones that like stick with me constantly, even if it's like, yeah, my friends are like, are you sure you're not going to grad school? Like,
no, be here now. You are the one we've been waiting for. Get in there.
There you go.
That's all I have to say. We're done.
Yeah, boom.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now that was just a couple of minutes of my interview with Parker, and if you want to hear the whole thing, go ahead and download it from our website. It's a really good listen with lots of great information in it. And as a special bonus, Parker put together their social media stalking guide, which you can also download on our website. And again, that website is catchabreakpodcast.com. Now just a quick note before we get into the discussion of Parker's interview. There were several times when we mispronounced Parker as we were talking about this interview, and we just want to apologize for that as we all try to do better in this area. Okay, first of all, what did you guys think? Andrea, what did you think of Parker and Parker's approach?
I found Parker really articulate, and I was just really impressed with how They articulated their thoughts and what they wanted and their enthusiasm. And even though this person doesn't have that much experience under their belt, as far as what I can see in coming up the ranks, I felt she had a lot going for her. I was really impressed. So
I thought Parker was so impressive, and the whole approach of Facebook stalking to find the people and putting all the pieces together and reaching out. Have you guys heard of people doing that before?
I wouldn't do that. Even though I found it innovative. But
I worked with a guy who had gotten his job by DMing the showrunner on Twitter. He had responded and built some kind of communication with the showrunner and then got offered like an assistant job, and that was his way into an assistant position on a show. So,
because you don't think that would work, but I hear more and more stories of that working.
I think Twitter and LinkedIn, but for me, Facebook is just more personal, and I don't ever respond to requests on Facebook unless I know them.
Yeah.
So for me, it's Twitter or LinkedIn.
Laurie, what do you think?
What was interesting, going off of what Andrea just said, that Parker had 2 friends on Facebook that were kind of in the business, and then used those friends, so she was able to see what those 2 friends, their friends, and then was able to kind of say, all right, let me see if I can get in. So I think it was like for every couple hundred people she tried to friend, maybe a few of them accepted, and then after that Parker was able to get coffees and phone calls with some of those
It's
people.
like a 6 degrees of separation kind of tactic, and it worked. So that's great. It's successful. I mean, any way in that you can figure out is the way in.
So Parker had a few questions that I wanted to pose to the panel. See what you say. The first one is, how do I find opportunities and what should my next steps be?
UTA job list.
What is that?
It is a job list put out by United Talent Agency. And if you can get your hands on it, it's a list that provides all kinds of jobs from PA to assistant to executive. And sometimes it's hard to get immediately after it's released, but after a few weeks, somehow it makes its way throughout the industry and through various contacts, and you can get that.
Is it just something that people pass around? I know I see it on one of my Google groups that people just posted.
Yes.
This is Eve.
People who get it share it. It's all over the place. But the jobs go very quickly.
Very quickly. That's why it's key to get it right away, but that's why it's
as possible.
if you're seeing it more than a week after it's published, it's almost meaningless.
Okay, so that should be one of your first questions when you meet new people is, do you have access to the UTA job list?
Also, just suggest starting off with all the contacts she already has and contacting everybody they know, seeing if they know of any positions that are around or someone's hiring, because especially on an assistant level, no one ever wants to hire someone that they have no connection with. They want to know people that can vouch for that person's work ethic, especially if you're going to be like on set or in an office for long hours at a time. You want to know what kind of situation you're getting into with someone independent of their resume. The resume is only part of it.
So you have to network.
Yes.
You have to.
Hopefully it's from friends and people that you've worked with in the past that enjoyed working with you, that would recommend you to other places. That's always the best recommendation when employers are looking.
You can also go on studio websites.
This is Andrea.
And look at their hiring of interns and PAs. Many of them have programs, and that's a way in too. I mean, you can just always cold call HR and just ask if they're hiring. Call all the agencies. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it can pay off.
Every company has a careers page, every company.
This is Laurie.
From the big studios all the way to those much smaller production companies. And everybody has an info ad or a careers ad or something. So it's easy to email or pick up the phone. But I agree that Parker has done a really good job of working out their network. And so I would keep doing that. And I believe that Parker's at an internship right now. Mm-hmm. And so if you're ever in that situation, temping, intern, something, get generals with pretty much everybody in the company you can think of. Let them know that you're looking and work those angles.
And I think that answers one of Parker's main questions is they're in this internship now. How do they ask for the job and who do they ask? So take general meetings with everybody.
Absolutely. Once you're in the door, you can pretty much get an informational with a lot of the people there.
Jessica, were you going to jump in on that?
Yeah, one thing that Parker mentioned that worked really well for me was going through your college's alumni network. And I think especially at some of the smaller liberal arts colleges, I went to Vassar and they had a really strong network where I was able to reach out to a lot of the people who had graduated, including Jason Blum, who ended up becoming one of my bosses, and get a job through that, or at least get those generals and informationals. And now that I'm working in the industry, whenever anybody reaches out from my college's network, I always say yes. I always grab coffee with that person.
Were you going to say something else, Eve?
I think the general information meetings are the best way to build a network and start meeting people. And I tell my students, don't ask for a job, just ask for advice. Don't ask for a lot of time, because if you're not putting someone on the spot and asking for a job and you're not asking for a lot of time, they're more likely to say yes. And if they like you, they're going to want to help you, even if they don't have anything at the moment.
Because they know you're looking for a job.
They do, but you go in with you research that person and you come in with some very intelligent questions, and you don't overstay your welcome, and you make an impact, and you ask if you can stay in touch, and you start building your network that way.
So what would you ask in a general meeting?
Well, I would ask, how did you get to where you are? What was your path? Did you have a plan when you started out? Was there anybody specific who helped you? And tell me what you love or don't like about your job. I'm trying to make decisions about my career, and I want to talk to as many people as I can and ask questions to find out what sounds like a good fit for me.
That's great. And people love telling their stories of how they got where they are.
They do. And networking. There's so many groups and organizations all over, and you go and you meet people, and you never know who knows someone who's going to be able to help you. And networking isn't a dirty word, and it's not about what other people can do for you. It's about what you can do for them. It's about building relationships, making friends, because basically people hire people they like and they know and they're comfortable with. So it just stands to reason, the more friends you make, the more connections you make, the more opportunities you'll have.
Yes, and I can see this industry looks gigantic when you're on the outside looking in, but once you're in, you realize it's so small.
Yeah, on the general meetings, I totally agree with everything Eve said. I'm always amazed that, when you have a good rapport and you have a good connection with somebody, and I say, hey, give them my card, stay in touch, let me know how you're doing, and I mean it, and I never hear from them again. They don't follow up. It's staggering to me that I feel like I'm a good connect, but maybe they get stymied, or I don't know what it is.
I wonder if they don't want to bother you.
That's right.
It's not bothering because, as you said, networking isn't a dirty word. You do have to find things to say and say, oh, I just saw the movie that your company put out. I really loved it. Talk about that, or talk about what you're doing, or hey, if you ever hear of any jobs there, let me know. It's just keeping in touch in a very friendly, positive, upbeat way. Yeah, I don't want a big 2-page email, but just a nice connect.
And you've given them permission, so hear that.
Totally,
you have permission to keep in touch.
Have permission. If someone says keep in touch, most people wouldn't say it unless they meant it.
I think a lot of young people are intimidated too when they meet with people who are more established in the industry. And I think what you learn when you've been working in this industry for a long time is that those people that you helped out when they were interns end up being your colleagues down the road. So when we do say stay in touch, it's not as a favor to you, it's because we actually think there's going to be a relationship there for many years.
That's why I think some of these people are getting through to directors and producers through Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, because it's not happening as much as you think it is. So the ones that are actually taking the wild swings and going for it sometimes, are getting the meetings and the jobs from it.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, which is, how do I find a mentor? Everyone says, get a mentor, get a mentor. How do you actually do that?
You just ask. I think there are several people, or a lot of people, who enjoy being mentors, but they don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to find someone to mentor today. But if they're asked, if somebody sends them a letter, or say you meet someone on a general information meeting and you feel there's a connection and you can really connect with this person, I think it's fine to send them a letter and say, I really enjoyed meeting you. blah, 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 would you consider? And also, I promise I won't become a stalker, and I know that there will be certain guidelines, and I won't overstep my bounds, and I won't take up too much of your time. And you kind of have an agreement going in, like agree to so many phone calls or face-to-face meetings within a certain period of time, and set limits on it so that the person doesn't feel overwhelmed. But I think just asking sometimes will do the trick.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, if the fear of rejection or fear of that, it's like you're going to get no, as we've said earlier. You're going to get a lot of no's, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And if you have that connect, and if you felt like the meeting went well, just follow up or just say, could I meet with you again in 3 months? Or, I'm happy to do that.
And then what does mentorship look like?
You have to agree what it's going to look like when you go into it. You have to both know what you're getting into.
To me, it's just giving advice. The person may have questions. I've had students, young people come to me, after we've met, and they'll say, I'm in this tight spot. I'm in this position. I'm being offered a better one that's higher paid, but I think I have better contacts in the one that I'm in. And then we talk about it. And so they'll just bring me issues, challenges, problems that they don't quite know which way to step. I'm not going to tell them what to do, but I'll give them my opinion and advice of what they might want to think about before taking that next step.
And you can help them walk through their thinking about it.
Totally.
Really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say always be appreciative. Lead with gratitude. Mm-hmm. So these people are giving you your free time. So even at the end of the call, be profuse and genuine about it. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Thanks, Laurie.
One thing I would just kind of backstepping a little bit, I think it's really important for people who want to work in this business to get comfortable with rejection early and not internalize rejection. Mm-hmm. I see that tendency a lot with people that I graduated with or other students, especially when you're younger. I think that's a common flaw for a lot of young people to have, and realizing that rejection is okay and letting it roll off your back and not letting it really derail you from what you want, and just realizing that that's a part of life and that's a part of this business in particular.
I think that's really right. A lot of people get derailed by, say they get 10 rejections in a row. It's like, so the 11th person's going to be the one that you vibe with. And to Laurie's point, it's you do need to vibe with someone. And when you do, you're going to know it. And if the other, if the meeting is a little strained, a little awkward, you can't quite flow with it, that's a sign it's not going that well. So go to the next one.
You'll find your people.
You're going to find your people. Yes. You're going to find your tribe. It's going to work out.
Keep trying till something clicks.
Exactly. Don't give up.
Having a good support system around you of friends and family that can encourage you, that you can rely on. And when you're feeling weak after you've been rejected, if that's something that you struggle with and you're not comfortable with rejection yet, having those people that can build you up so that you can learn how to deal with rejection.
It's a lot of self-talk. Eve?
I think it's important too for people who are just starting, especially, to have a support system, as Michael was saying. And there are a lot of clubs and groups, and I have started different groups, and we talk, we help each other, we talk about goals, everybody brainstorms. When someone's feeling really down and rejected, everybody builds them up, because we've all been through the roller coaster ride, the ups and the downs, and having a group of people who are going through the same things and are there to support you is very helpful.
Participant Media was one of the producers on The Help, and I remember hearing that particular author had sent that book around to, I think, over 35 people and got rejected, right?
Yes.
And not only was it a best-selling book, but then it became an amazing movie. So if she had stopped after the first 5.
So persistence is key.
Definitely.
Okay, and then the last bit I definitely wanted to talk about was Parker's dilemma with how authentic can I be at the risk of maybe not getting a job or not being accepted, because Parker identifies as non-binary and uses they, and I had to write a third-person biography about that and was struggling with, do I say that out of the gate or do I wait to get in and then slowly reveal myself? What would you guys say about that?
I would say please don't hide who you are.
Yeah.
Just be your authentic self from the get-go. Yeah. We want diversity across the board, and I think that's a welcome thing. I think it's refreshing. Just show up and be who you are.
And also, if they interview with someone who's not comfortable with that, then that's probably not someone they want to work with.
Anyway.
And authenticity in whatever form it takes for each person.
And this is Jessica.
Can really be an advantage too, because when you talk about applying for the UTA job list, you're in there with hundreds of other people, and if you don't have something that makes you unique and makes you stand out, and that's not, represented in your custom cover letter that you turn in along with your resume, it's just going to go in the stack, and nobody's ever going to take a look at it. So using those things that make you unique in the right ways, I think, can actually be a benefit.
Okay, so since you all brought up resumes, let's talk about resumes for a minute. Is a cover letter still necessary? What should your resume look like? Let's give some of those tips.
If you're going to have a cover letter, just keep it short, because I'm going to be looking at the resume. I mean, I can get tone, a little bit of who you are, but if it's a long cover letter, I check out.
Let's start with, is it even still required?
No, it's not really required. Just being in human resources, we're not really asking for a cover letter. I think, to your point about resumes kind of all looking the same, it's about the experience. It's hard to get a real tone in there. We kind of shy away from having someone put a lot of character into their resume. So a brief, 4-sentence, little paragraph on who you are as it relates to the company, so that we kind of know that you're not just sending out the general, here's my resume to everyone. But I love participant media, your last 3 films, and then name them were 3 of my favorite. I see this particular job opened. This is exactly what I've been looking for. Name 1 or 2 skill sets that fit perfectly. Would love to hear from you.
I think that's right. And even if it feels like, oh, I'm just brown nosing, in this cover letter, it's like, we don't know that. I mean, maybe you are, but you want to be enthusiastic for the company that you're applying to. So show that in your cover letter and keep it brief. And I would say, don't try and be cute in your resume. Don't try and be super funny. Just keep an even tone, keep it businesslike, and show off your best skills in your resume.
I actually use the cover letter as kind of a writing sample, because so much of what, when I'm hiring an assistant, I'm looking for them to be able to do is draft emails and correspondence on my behalf, to be able to write coverage, things like that. So somebody who has typos in their cover letter,
Oof, no.
Done.
Mm-hmm.
You're out.
And read it out loud, because then your mind doesn't fill in those missing words or say the wrong words. If you read it out loud, you could really hear what it says.
I just think a cover letter needs to briefly explain why you want to work at that company and why you would be a good fit for that job. But again, brevity is, the best guideline.
Now, what if your resume has nothing on it because you just graduated? Should you make stuff up? How do you present yourself?
Please don't do that.
Please don't lie. It's only going to become painfully obvious if you lie on your resume when the time comes to actually do what you say that you know how to do, and it's only going to go wrong for you in the long term. You might get the job, but do you want a job you got under false pretense?
Agreed. But for the people listening, do have something besides your education on your resume. Start early. Waitressing, Eagle Scout, internships,
Anything, working in your dad's office,
yes,
put something on there.
Yeah, but
you've got to have some experience.
Get some work experience.
Absolutely. It's important to be always hustling. You need to be learning things. If you're not learning things outside of school, and I say this as someone who works in a school is a very important part, but if you don't have any arena in your life that you've been able to apply what you've learned, then you're only doing part of your education.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What about if you've worked on other people's student films or made your own student films?
Great.
Do those go on your resume?
Yes.
Absolutely.
When you do a resume, though, don't just list the titles of the shows you work on. Put in parentheses or list what type of show it is. Is it a student film? Is it a short? Is it a music video? Also, if it's a long project and you just worked on it a couple of days, put in parentheses day player. When you're looking at resumes, you want to know, were they there for the whole show? Did they just come in for a few days? Were they there a week?
Your resume is a story, so the person is the reader, and you have an opportunity to tell them who you are. So if you're an extra on a movie set, if you've worked in your dad's office, I used to, when I had interns at Participant, I would sit with them and their resume, and we would go over it. And I was amazed at what they'd leave off. People that were almost professional athletes didn't have it on their resume. Think about the story that tells. The drive, if they were were the treasurer of their fraternity or sorority, all this volunteer work they did. So much was left off, and yet that tells me a story. When I'm looking for a receptionist or, a more junior position in the company, that type of experience goes a long way.
And it could be a point of connection for the specific person that you're meeting with who is also almost a professional athlete.
Yeah. I also think it's important to know that you can't just have a blanket resume when you're going out for different jobs. I always kept one resume that had every single thing I've ever done on it with descriptions and everything ready to go, and then I would pick the jobs that pertain to the job I was applying to and kind of just tailor so you can't fit everything you've ever done in your life, and you want to just give the most important things that pertain to that company or that position that you're going for.
And make it easy to read. Do columns, bullet points, don't crowd the font so where everything is squeezed in. If it's not easy to read, chances are it might not be read.
And please always send it in a PDF format so that the format that you intended it to be is actually translated to whatever. Some people will send Word document, like actual Microsoft Word documents or something. And I think that's thankfully mostly gone, but some people still do those kind of things. And you can't ensure what your audience is going to see. And the formatting can get corrupted, and then it's not clear, and that costs you a potential interview. So
now, Laurie, you mentioned online. There's so much online submitting now, and there seems to be the algorithm, and it seems to be a mystery how to beat the algorithm to get the phone call. Does anyone have any insight on that?
So you think about SEO these days and search engine optimization. If someone says in the job ad, I'm looking for someone with assistant skills, highly organized, agency experience, whatever their words are, if you have it, make sure it's in your resume. So you're kind of, as long as it's true, make sure you're putting that back in, because if they've got an applicant tracking system, it's picking up on those types of words. Specifically, if you're looking for someone in marketing and you've got marketing experience, by all means, make sure marketing's in there. Same thing on your LinkedIn profile. So everything should kind of match the job you're looking for. Keywords.
Okay, and then let's talk about references a little bit, because people don't always call the references that you have listed, because as we said before, the business is so small and everybody knows each other. Talk a little bit about how that actually works.
I can talk about it.
This is Laurie.
Well, one, just always be kind to everyone, be great and leave everything better than where it was when you started, because your reputation does follow you. So if I am talking to someone seriously, I'm normally going to try to call some people that aren't on the reference list to get the real scoop, because I wouldn't give you a reference of mine unless I knew they were going to say great things about me. So just make sure that you're doing a good job with that. I also think when you're applying for a job that you really want, if you see that someone knows someone in that company, I do think it's worth your while, especially if you're trying to get the job still for that person. I would call Andrea and be like, I really want to work at this company. I see you know someone. Any chance you could put in a good word for me?
Yes, I agree with that. After you've managed the interview, but not before. I really find it difficult to have people call me before and there's a resume somewhere in your stack and I think that person's really good. And it's like, it just makes it awkward. I may have passed on it for some reason, and it doesn't help. It really, to me, doesn't help until afterwards. Then afterwards, please call me.
You're also burning your favors by asking people to call on your behalf for a job.
Before you've even got the call for the interview.
Okay, now if you get into that job and you get the first assistant job or the internship, generally, do you think it's better to work and rise at that company, or is it better to move around if you can? Do you guys have opinions on that?
I think it depends on the company
and what's
your
available.
Relationship. Yeah, in some cases it's absolutely, if you're feeling it and there's room to grow in there, then by all means stay. In today's day and age though, especially on a more junior resume, it's okay if I see every year, kind of a skip from one job to another. Again, it's telling a story. So when you're first starting out, people do tend to move around a lot. But if you're into a good spot and it's they're growing and there's room for growth and you really like the team that you're working on and the projects, stay.
I think as long as you're still learning too. If you're moving yourself forward career-wise, I think that's really important. That's the advice that I give to most of my interns is, just know when you've gotten everything that you're going to get out of that position, and then it's time to move on. And make sure that you do so gracefully, because I do think it's a red flag if you see somebody who's moving on more than every year. You see somebody who's jumped jobs, twice in a year or 3 times in a year. That's a big red flag.
Shows a lack of maturity and a lack of commitment.
I do think you often hit a point where you cap out internally at a company, where if you did come in as an intern, you worked as an assistant, and you get promoted to junior exec, which is amazing, and I think is often the best way to get promoted. Eventually you do kind of hit that wall where there are some people who still think of you as an assistant, or you hit a salary cap, where your peers are coming in at higher salaries than you, having worked your way up. And at that point, it might be time to jump to another job, but you just have to weigh the pros and cons there, because it's also, then you're starting over from scratch and rebuilding those relationships, and the new relationship with a new company can be, some time that you have to invest.
Okay, so speaking of that, Jessica, if you're an assistant at a job and you want to move to the next level, become a junior exec, what do you need to do in order to make that leap, and what should people expect as they're on that path?
You have to just start doing the jobs that you want. When I was working for Mark Hames as an assistant in development at DreamWorks, I just started doing notes on every single project that was submitted to him. He never asked me for them. I never actually got any feedback from him on my notes until one day I didn't do notes, and he said, well, where are your notes? And then suddenly I was like, oh, I guess you're reading them. And so there was never a moment of like, this is what you need to do. And then when Mark left DreamWorks, to start out as a writer and producer, he took me with him as his junior executive, because I'd already put in all of that work for him as an assistant.
I think that's right. I think whatever the next step is that you want to get to, you just start doing that job, not asked. Nobody is going to come, to you on a silver platter and say, "Oh, would you like to do this as your next?" No, you have to work towards it, and then you'll get noticed. Just like Jessica said, is the classic example of how it would work.
And don't ask for permission to do the work, or ask them if they want you to do the work. Better to ask forgiveness and ask permission.
Nobody is doing a certain type of follow-up report, whatever it is. Just step in and do it.
Now, do we need to say that there are some parts of your boss's job you don't grab and start doing?
Well, that's a really good question, because that's really the crux of the matter in terms of being able to read the room, read the executive, read the job, and it's a very fine line you need to walk to be able to determine for yourself whether you're going to be threatening, stepping on his or her toes or not. That's something that you have to feel your way through.
I have had to fire an assistant who was producing his own content from my desk and using my Rolodex.
Me too. I have had to.
Yeah, and I told him, you're going to do great, you're going to go on, and sure enough, he's producing his own movies now and doing wonderfully at it, but it wasn't appropriate to do from the desk.
The person that did it for me did not go on to.
So it could go either way. Be very careful and very talented.
Yeah, you had better be good if you're going to do that.
Okay, so that brings up, when is it appropriate to show my superiors my work?
I feel like we have a theme going here with, you got to read the room, you got to know, do your job first, be really good at it, make sure that everything's taken care of, have a relationship, maybe start dropping some seeds here and there and see if they bite on it, but be really careful.
You've got to be careful, and you've got to, understand the culture of promotion at your company. You've got to be really careful when you make that move. I mean, usually people are pretty receptive. They want to see what you're doing, but it's your approach and it's your attitude. And if you're cocky and a little over the top about it, probably not great. A little humbleness, might work in your favor.
When you start a new job, the people who hired you are not looking to see how talented you are right off the bat. What's going to impress them is your great attitude and your work ethic. Once they fall in love with you and feel like you're a great fit and they like you, then they're going to want to get to know you better, and then they may ask you, so tell me about yourself, tell me what you do and what you've been working on. But in the beginning, they just care about a great attitude and somebody who's there for them.
And they have a job that needs to be done.
Right.
It's really all about building trust.
Yes.
Trust is the biggest test, it's the biggest factor of how much that person can rely on you and how honest and what your integrity level is to, perform the task. And then you grow with that. And once you're comfortable and they like you, then you can say, hey, I've got this, film. And people are usually more than happy to take a look once you've established that level.
Make sure it's good, though. Like, don't show them your mediocre film, especially when it's a boss, unless they're really keen on giving feedback and helping you grow. But if you're showing it with the hopes of turning that into another position somewhere down the way, definitely show them your most polished work.
I think that's really key, is just being respectful of their time. That's what it all goes back to for me, is don't ask for notes on the first draft of your script. Make sure that this is something that you think is 100% of the way there before you ask for that feedback. And if you can make it easier for them, do it. Like if you have a friend who does coverage at another company or something like that, and you can attach their coverage that's positive to your script and make it that much more enticing for them to read, I think that always helps too.
Right, sizzle reel, trailer, those types of short film, if you've got something that's a little bit light touch to get started once they've asked for it.
Which goes back to being okay with rejection. Just because you show your work to your boss doesn't mean that they're going to be able to help you with it, doesn't mean that they're going to be able to pass it on to their bosses. So being able to take no or take whatever constructive criticism they might be able to offer you.
I think approaching it just from wanting growth for yourself, not necessarily finding another job, is kind of key. Like getting there, looking for their feedback to help you grow as an artist, if you're a writer, director, or whatever, is much more constructive for you long term than.
I think that's right. I think it's in the approach. Like if somebody comes to me and says, I think this is ready to attach a director, I'm like, whoa, okay. As opposed to, this is, my second, third polish, whatever it is, and I wonder if you could, take a look and see what you think, is a much better approach than, hey.
I'm ready for you to package this, send it out. So in the whole scheme of this, there's a balance of talent and business skills, and what do you think the mix of that is?
Talent without tact is really not very useful.
I think there's a third part of it, which is experience. I think what I learned, I always tell people that my film school was Andrea McCall. And the reason why was because in the story department, we had access to every script that was submitted to DreamWorks as long as it wasn't confidential. We had access to every single draft that had been written for every single produced movie. And so that was my education, was just reading and consuming, and then reading what the professional readers thought of each script and talking to Andrea about it. And Andrea was wonderful because she'd come back from weekend read meetings and say, here's what all the executives thought about it. And so for me, it's about accumulating all of that data from your own work and experience that then boosts your talent, lets you have a place that you're speaking from when you say that I would rather do it this way, which is innovative, or I know that this way works because I've read it 4 times in these different types of scripts. That to me outweighs talent or business skills, yes.
I'd say the other piece of that is attitude. Almost 90% of all terminations now are due to attitude. In every case, with every client I'm working with, back at my participant days, if there's an aptitude and they've got some experience, depending on the level of the job, I'll still be looking for the attitude. It'll get you so far. So you have to have a great, great attitude.
Okay, now if you get the interview and you're in there, what are some of the questions that you should ask when they say, do you have any questions? I think you should never say, no, I'm good.
I'd also ask just long-term, what opportunities are there for my growth? Whether it's expanding my skill set or whatever that means to you. Just ask them what opportunities they have there to learn, not just what the job consists of, but what you can learn while you're there. Hopefully you indicate that you're willing to work hard and do whatever the job takes to get done and have a good work ethic, but also that you are wanting to learn and grow, not just cash a very meager paycheck and go home.
It's a stepping stone, not a long-time career.
Exactly.
Position.
Yeah, I think also a lot of companies are listing their vision and mission and core values, but especially if you're talking to the person that you'll be working for directly, kind of how they see that and how they keep those going in the job, at hand. How are they kind of living the mission and the values? And then what type of person are they looking for in that role? Going back to attitude, just to make sure that you're kind of lined up that way. So, what are you looking for?
And then at what point, if you are offered the job, should you negotiate salary?
Ask them what it pays right when they offer you the position. That's my mindset.
But do you negotiate that first offer for your very first job, or do you wait until you're in a higher position?
You're probably not going to have the opportunity to negotiate on your very first job. They probably have a starting base salary, and it is what it is. I think that once you've put in the time and proven yourself, you should set a benchmark where you're going to ask for a raise and say, I've proven myself, I'd like to stay at the company, here's what I need. And I think that there are a lot of people who are afraid to ask for those raises going forward at a company, but probably not when you're hired.
I would respectfully slightly disagree, though. Rule of thumb for life, everything's negotiable, and if someone offers you a salary and you realize it might be a little lower than what you need to cover your base expenses, which happens a lot with assistant positions, unfortunately, I think just asking very politely if there's any more room on that, or
never hurts.
Never hurts. The worst thing they're going to tell you is no, and they're not going to rescind your job offer just because you asked for more money. And a lot of employers actually, they may not acquiesce to that, but they'll probably respect you for it.
I think that's right.
I agree. Yeah.
We all got to get paid.
Yeah.
As people who hire, are you rescinding an offer because someone negotiates?
No.
Do you find that men negotiate more often than women?
100%.
Yeah. I think that brings us to our martini shot, which is our last shot of the day. What is everybody's parting advice, biggest takeaway, point you didn't get to make yet that you think is important?
I'll start.
Right.
I was speaking at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences to their Academy Gold program. It's worth looking up, a great diversity and inclusion program that the Academy puts together. And I told the students, really the number one thing for me is a Steve Martin quote, "Be so good they can't ignore you."
That's good. Go work at a talent agency. If you're straight out of school, everyone seems to be really, they don't want to do that path, but you learn so much being at an agency, just so much. And all the executives that I know of prefer someone who's coming off an agent's desk because that's how you learn the business.
Because you can see all the parts.
You see so much.
You can't go wrong.
You cannot go wrong.
Never going to be a bad call.
Through a process of osmosis, just by sitting there, you can't help but absorb and learn so much about the business and what's going on, and you're making, your contact, your initial group of friends that you're going to rise up through the industry with. I found it valuable. That's how I started out, and I just see it with so many other kids.
It's also kind of a stamp of approval that you've been through the fire, and you know that as somebody hiring that person can cut it.
Michael.
Don't let people's bad behavior or poor attitudes, especially employers, embitter you or detract you from whatever reason got you here in the first place, got you out here. There'll be a lot of obstacles, and don't let that detract you from your goal.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Jessica, before the gardeners get any closer.
It's about exploring every avenue and taking, the road less traveled as you're looking for those jobs, but then also, don't be determined that this is my path and I have to get this job to lead to that job. You never know where different things are going to lead, and you may not want to take the job at the agency, but it's going to open a lot of doors, and being able to follow those moments of serendipity.
Thank you.
Well said.
Okay, passion. Have a lot of passion. It's very attractive. It's if you're passionate about being in a job and about the industry, it will attract people to you. Also, know the business that you want to be in. Read the trade papers, go to events, watch old classic movies.
Do your homework.
Know about the industry. Know who people are, who's doing what. It's also very attractive to potential employers.
And read Eve's books. This has been Catch a Break, the insider's guide to breaking into and navigating Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I want to thank our panelists, Laurie Liu, Michael Figari, Andrea McCall, Jessica Malanafi, and Eve Honthaner. And special thanks to our intern, Akiva Nemetsky, and our consultant, Lee Schneider of Red Cup Studios. Thanks also to Audio Department, who generously provided the recording equipment, and Jean Malanafi, who designed our logo. And a big thank you to Andrew Jocelyn, who created our theme song, Mantra for a Struggling Artist, and any additional music you hear throughout. Catch a Break is produced by Jeanette Volturno, Jessica Malanafi, Marcy Brown, Rick Osako, Shirley Davis, and me, Julie Harris Walker. Now you're going to want to check out our next episode, which is entitled, What Are All These Forms and Who Are All These People? This is the episode where we're going to go through call sheets. Who is everybody on a set and what are they doing? And we're going to do that for scripted TV and film and also unscripted or reality television. And we're going to give you samples of those forms so you can follow along. So go find that episode next. You can find us at catchabreakpodcast.com, and that is also where you can go to download the bonus materials. Join our mailing list so you don't miss an episode or other programs, and we want to hear from you. So reach out through the website. Again, that's catchabreakpodcast.com, and also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and we hope this helps you to catch a break.